Aloha, it's Dave Lawrence. How are you? Big mahalo for tuning in. I hope you're doing good. Today on the line is a legendary jazz drummer. He is in Honolulu for a Thursday night gig at Studio 909, and he's also got a gig this weekend with the Lieutenant Dan Band. Our buddy Gary Sinise back in town playing for the troops. He's played drums for a massive roster of artists and projects, including Pat Metheny, the Mahavishnu Orchestra with John McLaughlin, Al Di Meola, Bobby McFerrin, Branford Marsalis, Chick Corea, Larry Coryell, Wayne Shorter, Lieutenant Dan, as I mentioned, the Blues Brothers Band, Herbie Hancock, Sting. I'm just naming a few highlights in a career that is just massive. He's got books on jazz, masterclass DVDs, chops that continue to impress. It is an honor to welcome Danny Gottlieb. Aloha and mahalo, Brother Danny.
Oh, thank you, Dave. Great to talk to you.
It's great to have you as a very special guest here. And before we get into your latest trip through town, what is it? Describe sort of your connection and background. When did you first start coming to the islands?
Well, I used to come to Hawaii so much. I mean, I think the beginning was when I was playing with Pat Metheny, which would have been, it was with Gary Burton, the vibraphone player. 76, we played in Honolulu. I remember we did some sort of a tour, and that was the first time I came to Hawaii. And then the Pat Metheny group started in 77, and we used to go to Japan a lot. So we would hit Hawaii on the way back when we would be returning. And then Mark Egan and I used to book a lot of other jobs ourselves. Mark was the original bass player in the Pat Metheny group. And we had friends on Kauai, so we used to stop as much as we could, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. I've made many, many trips to the islands. It's been a while. But now I've been playing a lot with my friend Jeff Richmond, who's originally from Hawaii. He's a guitarist who lives in L.A. And whenever I know I'm heading this way, if we can coordinate, we try to book a couple of gigs, and that's what we're doing this time.
It's super cool. And Jeff how long has Jeff lived here? Can we throw him on real quick, or is he...
Sure, I'll put Jeff on right now. He actually doesn't live here, but he returns to the islands quite a lot. I'll put Jeff on. Here's Jeff Richmond.
Hi there.
Aloha, Jeff. How you doing, brother?
Aloha. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good to talk to you. When did you start making Hawaii sort of a regular stop for yourself?
Maybe around 5 years ago or so. I went to Roosevelt High School. I grew up here. I went to University of Hawaii for a little while before moving to the mainland. But 5 years ago, I kept coming back, and one of the reasons was Dean Taba. Great bass player. He's one of my favorite bass players.
Yeah, he's a monster. Just saw him with Ben Vereen the other day.
Yeah, and he lives here. He moved here, and I've done a lot of records, and he's on a lot of them. So he helped in getting me some gigs here, and I love coming back. I love the ocean and everything.
Were you born here, Jeff?
No, my father taught at the University of Hawaii when I was in high school, or like in a junior high. So I came out here, with my family.
You weren't going and seeing those Pat Metheny shows with Danny, were you, that he was talking about here in Hawaii when you were a kid?
No, because when I was in Hawaii, you know who I heard, though, in Hawaii? I heard Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, all these great bands. And I was at the Crater Festival. It was, I heard a lot of good music here growing up.
You saw Hendrix over at the Waikiki Shell?
I saw him at the Shell, and he also played at what was called then the HIC Arena.
Right, the arena. And you saw Zeppelin in the same place then?
No. I saw Zeppelin on that concert hall on King Street.
The Blaisdell Concert Hall?
No, it's like it was a small... A lot of people played there, like Jethro Tull played there. A band named Spirit played there. All kinds of bands played there. I forget the name of the place. Because, I'm getting old now. I can't remember anything.
And it's not the...
It was like...
It's not the Blaisdell you're talking about.
No.
Wow,
it was
that
on
is
King
cool.
Street. Oh, man, I can't remember.
Not
I
old...
saw Led Zeppelin.
Not the old stadium you're talking about.
No. It was on the north side of the street.
Nice.
And it was an awesome concert hall.
What a lucky guy to have seen all that cool stuff here. And now you're...
I saw Led Zeppelin. I was about 10 feet away from them.
And Jimmy Page 10 feet away?
Jimmy Page was 10 feet away, and he looked like he was 19 years old.
That's cool. You got a lot of great appreciation for tunes, dude, and we're fortunate. We're fortunate that you came back our way and make Hawaii a regular stop for yourself. We appreciate it.
Great. Well, I hope some people come out tonight. It'll be really fun.
Yeah, well, we hope so, too. Good talking to you, Jeff.
Great. Here's Danny, okay?
Thanks, brother.
Great events in Hawaii. Wow.
Man, I know that cat was just soaking them up. That is really something else. And when you think about great events and doing unusual things, how was it? I'm very curious. What led to you getting the gig with Gary doing the Lieutenant Dan thing?
The oddest of circumstances, and it's something. I mean, it's a job that kind of materialized out of nowhere. I was living in New York for 20 years, being a musician, mostly traveling and, doing recording sessions and whatever I could, not really being in one group that much, but just, playing with some of the people that you mentioned before. And then I met my wife and moved down to Florida. She was based in Orlando, percussionist, and was teaching in a university there. And I was kind of commuting back and forth to New York. And one of the jobs I started doing in Orlando, of all things, was playing the Christmas show at Epcot, which sounds kind of crazy, but it's like a 40-piece orchestra. It's easy. We could do it together, and it's just one of the really good gigs for a musician in Central Florida. So I ended up, playing this show, and I've done it now for the last 12 years. And Gary Sinise was the narrator. They have different narrators every 3 days. They have a different personality, kind of reading Christmas stories, and they have 250 kids holding candles in a 40-piece orchestra. And it's just something to do. And about the 5th year I was doing it, Gary walked over to me one day and he said, "Didn't you used to play with Pat Metheny?" And I said, "How would you even know who that is?" Or, and he said, "Well, I'm actually a bass player. I started playing bass first, and I actually used some of Pat's music for a show that I was doing." And he was friends with Pat casually. And then he said, "I've got this little band. It's called the Lieutenant Dan Band, named for the character in Forrest Gump, and we play, some benefit concerts." And I just thought, okay, that's nice, and I didn't really give it a lot of attention. And then Kimo Williams, who works with Gary, who's kind of in charge of the band, who's also someone who spent a lot of time in Hawaii, called and said, "We have a job in Orlando. Would you and your wife like to sub with the band? The drummer that we've been using can't make it." And it was a cover band, and I figured it was going to be easy, and it ended up being one of the hardest gigs I ever did, because he was playing 2 1.5-hour shows, so it was almost 50 songs, and they were all charted out. I had to learn them, and if you were doing a lot of pop music, you would know them, but I didn't know a lot of them, so it was a difficult learn, and it turned out Gary could really play. It was magical. He was, could really hold down the fort. He's got good time. He remembers the chord changes. And then after that gig, which was a heavy one, we were playing for the disabled veterans. It was a Wounded Warrior Project in Orlando. And we met a lot of guys who had just come back from the war, who had lost limbs and had suffered a lot of trauma. And this was kind of a weekend for everybody to bond together and just kind of re-enter. And it just moved me to the point I've never really played a gig where I was so affected by, what the audience was doing and what they had been through. And then Gary said, "Well, we're going to really try to take this to another level with you and your wife want to be part of the band." And that was 8 years ago. And it's just been growing and going and going. And this guy is a nonstop do-good guy. And this year I think we're playing 11 concerts where we're raising money to build homes for soldiers who were wounded in the war. It's all because of Gary, too. But it's fun. The music's good. People are great. And this, I think, is the 5th time to Hawaii with that band. So it's great. You get to travel. It's fun.
Yeah, and you're really doing a great service helping out people. I can imagine that would really touch you and move you to realize you could apply your musical skills in a whole different way to sort of do good yourself. You mentioned in that, talking a little bit about Gary's background, that he was a casual friend of Pat Metheny and that he had sort of come up to you based on you being a part of Pat's band. What led to you being with Pat? How did you first meet Pat Metheny?
Well, Pat Metheny and Mark Egan, the original bass player in the Metheny group, and I were classmates in college. We all went to the University of Miami in the early 70s, which just for some weird reason was a small up-and-coming jazz school. And for one reason or another, a lot of really great musicians, people who turned out to become very well-known musicians, all went to college at the same time. And Pat was a classmate. We hit it off. We had a little band. And played all the time. And then Pat left school to go teach at Berklee College of Music in Boston at age 19 while I was finishing up school. And then I would travel up to Boston Oh, and Jeff Richmond took lessons with Pat at Berkeley. That's great during that time period. And then the band started. So we met through school. That was our first association.
That's cool. Berkeley's a special place. I went to college at Emerson, so right around the corner there.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Dave went to school at Emerson.
And I had a lot of friends at Berkeley. I used to go to the CAF at Berkeley. They do these shows in the cafeteria Saturday night, like all the seniors and older kids, and they would do a tribute. I saw Metheny tribute, Genesis tribute, Allman Brothers, Santana, Rush, Yes, just like endless amounts.
Oh, yeah.
And they were epic. So I can imagine Jeff just laying it down there without any doubt. It always makes, when I know that you were part of that era of Pat's life, was Jaco Pastorius ever someone who was in your life then?
Oh, absolutely. When I first got to Miami in '71, Jaco was kind of a fixture on the Miami music scene, and he ended up teaching at the University of Miami. And Mark Egan, again, who's a best friend, who was the original bass player in the Metheny group, studied with Jaco at school. And there's a legendary musician who was important to all of us, who is originally from Chicago, named Ira Sullivan, who was a famous saxophone player, and he was a fixture on the Miami scene. And we all got to play with Ira, Jaco included, and we were all kind of mentored by Ira Sullivan, although Jaco was like a freight train from the minute anybody ever heard him, so he didn't really need a lot of mentoring. But he used to play a lot with Ira, and we used to do that too. So yes, we got to. In fact, my very first recording session in my life ever was a demo that Jaco had asked me to play on, and it was he was so strong a player. It kind of changed everybody that he came in contact with.
Wow, your first ever recording, really, with him?
Yeah, can you believe that? It was with Jaco. I don't even remember what it was for. I don't think it was ever released. But Jaco we used to play every once in a while. But Jaco would play drums. If there was a beat he wanted you to play, he'd sit down, and he was burning. Like a great R&B drummer. Really, really good. Just great.
Guy was an absolute savage. Speaking of absolute savages, and it's an era of this band that, admittedly for myself, not my favorite era for this band at all, but I know that there was a lot of chops, a ballistic amount. The Mahavishnu Orchestra. You started in 1984, correct? Is that when it was?
Yeah, I was in a reconstituted version of that.
Right, and I know that. I mean, the classic band with Rick Laird and Jerry Goodman, I guess it was, and Billy Cobham and Jan Hammer and John.
Yeah, that band played at the University of Miami, I think in 1972. So Metheny and I and Mark and everybody else at school actually saw that band in its infancy, and it just changed our lives. It was the most powerful, electrifying, blast-out band anybody had ever heard. They're playing on the patio at the university and just like playing this electrifying. Yeah, we all went crazy.
I bet.
And then to actually get to play with John McLaughlin 20 years later was just like amazing.
What was he like? I mean, I've heard he's a very demanding dude.
Oh, he was demanding, but also fun. And I tend to a lot of times associate with people that are sort of like mentors in a way. And the way I got involved in '84, let's see, what had happened? I was playing with Michael. In fact, a concert here in Hawaii. I played in 1984. I was on tour with the singer Michael Franks, and Michael had hired a band that was basically led by Mark Egan, my buddy from the Metheny group, and the saxophone player was Gil Evans, the saxophone, not the piano player, but the saxophone player, Gil Evans, who played with Miles Davis. And we did a big tour, and we ended up at the Performing Center in Honolulu. Is it Blaisdell? Is that the name of the place?
Yep.
Is that the one that's here? Yeah, we played there, '84, with Michael Franks, and we were all abuzz because Bill Evans was going to leave to go do a reunion tour with the Mahavishnu Orchestra with Billy Cobham on drums. And instead of the original lineup, he was going to have saxophone, and Bill was going to be the saxophone player, and we all thought that was great. And then I get a phone call from Bill a couple of weeks later saying, look, hey, Danny, John's going to call you. Billy Cobham is not doing the tour. And I thought, yeah, right. And then, 3 o'clock in the morning, John McLaughlin calls from France and says, would you get on a plane tomorrow? We'd love you to play in this band. And it was like, oh, okay. And I dropped everything and, I had to cancel jobs and everybody was mad at me, but I had to do it. This is John McLaughlin. And then I went and played, and we did about a month of gigs. And it wasn't the Intermounting Flame band, with all that really kind of stuff that was in odd times. It was just sort of a group. And most of it was in 4/4. The bass player was Jonas Hellborg from Sweden, and the piano player Mitch Foreman, who's from a friend from New York, who later went on to play with Wayne Shorter, and now is a fixture in the LA scene. And we toured. We did a month, and it went well. And I, of course, I had to go play, and everybody's yelling, "Where's Billy?"
Oh.
But I did. It's just like a friend of mine was at the very first gig we did in London, and "Where's Billy?" And then I just played the best I could. But it was well received. But John, like you said, is a very demanding guy, and there were certain things I wasn't doing. I was used to playing a very coloristic style of drums from the Metheny days. There was some grooving in there, but also a lot of cymbals and high end and colors and textures. And John was really more used to a Billy Cobham, Elvin Jones, more intense drumming. And I was doing okay, but there was something that wasn't working for him. So hire me and just get somebody else, which I was afraid of. He said, "Look, I really just want to work with you and show you." He said, "I actually did the same thing with Billy. We got together and just played for a couple of weeks." So he flew me home, flew me back to Europe, and we spent 2 weeks just guitar and drums. And we played every day. And he started teaching me a little about Indian music, and there were certain rhythms that he liked. And I changed it up. I got bigger drums, bigger sticks, bigger cymbals, and just said, "Okay, you want more power? Let's go." And I just kind of practiced. I worked, and I don't think my playing, it changed, but it was really more just a busier, louder, more intense way of playing. And I kind of figured out what he wanted, and then for the next 2 years it worked out fine until he decided he wanted to go into a different direction. But it was great. He was intense but fun. I mean, John McLaughlin was a fun person to be around. Opinionated. He loved to debate. He was a debate guy. And sometimes he'd make a comment and say, "Here's a recording. Do you like it?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I don't like it." Or he would take issue. And I'd say, "Okay, well, let me go listen to it again." And then he'd say, "No, I want to talk to you about it. I don't even know if I don't like it. I just wanted to get into a conversation." So I was laughing at the fact that he was trying to almost confront you into discussing things. I was more looking at him as a teacher, and he was looking at me as someone to discuss things. But that was sort of a memory of that he was intense but fun. And a couple times we'd have great nights on the road, and a couple times we'd have lousy nights. And first he would get kind of upset, and then he'd say, "Look, anytime we have a bad night, this is a great thing. Got to look at it as a positive. We can always get better." And that was kind of the rule of that band, which was we'd have some weird nights where we couldn't hear, and the time would be weird, and we'd forget the songs, and things would be falling apart. And then he would just kind of get on us, almost like a coach, and it was fun. And in retrospect, it was great experience. And there's a DVD that came out about 2 years ago. It's that band live at the Montreux Jazz Festival, John McLaughlin, Mahavishnu. And there's another, I think it's half of it is a band with Narada Michael Walden, the second Mahavishnu, and then the other half of it is our band 10 years later. And it wasn't that well documented, so I'm glad there's a DVD out that has that band on it. So it was great.
Yeah, in the last several years, I've noticed a lot more. And also you mentioned that Narada Michael Walden lineup from like Beyond, the Visions of the Emerald Beyond, that whole era.
Emerald Beyond, right.
Yeah, that is a
big influence. But that was, just as a musician, you get lucky sometimes if you just keep at it, things fall your way, and it ends up being turning points. The Metheny association with school was one, and then being a New York musician and having so many friends that were just actively playing was another one, and then the Mahavishnu thing was a great experience. And then something that kind of came out of that but was another life changer, I got to play in the Gil Evans Orchestra for 4 years. Gil Evans was the great arranger who worked with Miles Davis in the 50s, and who toward the end of his life had this kind of it was like a free big band where, most big bands, when you play, you have a song and you're going to solo on this and you're going to solo, and it's a very structured thing. Imagine, 18 people on a stage where you just played the melody to a song, and then anybody could do anything at any time. And Gil's playing along on piano, so if you decided you wanted if Hiram Bullock was playing guitar, somehow a jazz song would turn into Purple Haze before we got too far into it. And just it made for some of the most magical music. And other nights it was the worst music you ever heard because nothing was happening. It was so unstructured that you took a risk that it could be a bad night. But more than not, it was great. And then it turned out that Sting really liked the Gil Evans Orchestra and came in and would sit in with the group at the Monday night weekly sessions. And then he ended up having us play a big concert. So I got to play with Sting with Gil Evans. In fact, if you look on the Internet, you can find a bunch of videos from that concert. So that was another life-changing thing. And from that, Tom Bones Malone, who plays on the Letterman show right now, who was so active in the Blues Brothers, was in the Gil Evans Orchestra. And from that, he said, would you ever want to go on the road with the Blues Brothers band? And I said, sure. So I got to do that for a while. And then from that, I got to play with Booker T and the MGs. So, one thing leads to another. And I just, just by keeping at it, I get to do a lot of different types of things.
You have a very diverse background, and it's wonderful getting to pick your brain about it. I'm looking forward to this weekend. Hopefully we can connect, and I'd like to just save a few of your stories for an interview in person, if we could try to pull that off over at the base.
Oh, absolutely.
On set.
Again, it's great to be here in Hawaii. Please come out tonight if you can make it. It's going to be a great band. In fact, there's another drummer playing. Noel's last name?
Okimoto.
Noel Okimoto, yes, is going to be playing, and we played last night, just switching off 2 drums, and sometimes
I was
plays,
watching.
Percussion.
I saw you
and
down there.
Fun, Oh, yeah, that's right. You said you were going to stop by.
Came over right before Cage, was taking a look at you guys up there. Double drummer extravaganza. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So please come out. And thanks so much, Dave. Thanks for the support. Good luck at the station, and great to be back on the island.
And will you cut a quick ID for me, Brother Danny? Is that all right?
Absolutely. Anything. Tell me what you want me to say.
Real easy. You just say, aloha, this is Danny Gottlieb, and you're tuned to the only show that matters with my good friend, Dave Lawrence.
Okay. Ready?
Sure.
Aloha, this is Danny Gottlieb, and you are tuned to the only show that matters with my good friend, Dave Lawrence.
And then just do the with my good friend, Dave Lawrence, one more time.
Okay. With my good friend, Dave Lawrence.
Excellent. And then one other one. Aloha, this is Danny Gottlieb, hanging out with... It's going to be in 2 parts, so just repeat after me. Aloha, this is Danny Gottlieb, hanging out with my good buddy, Dave Lawrence.
Hi, aloha, this is Danny Gottlieb, hanging out with my good buddy, Dave Lawrence.
And when I heard there was a chance to do a 420 ID for Brother Dave, I jumped on it.
When I heard there was a chance to do a 420 ID with Brother Dave, I jumped on it.
And now I finally get my chance.
And now I finally get my chance.
Hey, Brother Dave, have a happy, healthy 420.
Hey, Brother Dave, have a happy, healthy 420.
Good man. All right, Brother Danny, I will. Let's.
We were going over a few bumps. Did you get that clearly? Did you get it, or did it sound weird?
No,
okay.
It sounded good. That's why I got you to repeat the other thing before, where I needed a redo. Over.
Whatever you need. And thanks. I've started to ramble, but I was.
Dude, you're wonderful. Don't be sorry about anything. Okay. I love your effing stories. Okay. Are you kidding me? You're one of the savages I grew up listening to. So look, though, seriously, I did save a couple stories because I do want to get you at the thing.
Fantastic. Great. Yeah, it sounds good. And I have an itinerary that they sent by email. I'll go take a look at it, and I'll just give you a call back. Hey, Dave, one last thing for you. Sure. Where are you from originally? Where is your background?
I'm from the Philly area. I went to college for 12 and lived in Boston, so I was total of 12 years in Boston. I worked at WBCN, big commercial rock station there for about a decade.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then got a buddy in Connecticut. Was buying a station out here, and so I came. I did that for 5.5 years, and then I've been with these cats doing afternoons for about 2 years.
Oh, fantastic. You enjoying it? It's going well?
Oh, hell yeah, bro.
Oh, that's great. And it's NPR. Fantastic. My best friend is the afternoon guy on Q1043 in New York, Ken Dashout.
Yeah, I know exactly who that is. Yeah.
Yeah, he's my absolute best friend. We talk almost every day.
Dude, that station is the best.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. Oh, cool.
I mean, that is one of the best classic rockers. Well, give him, if you do talk to him, I give him a super high five. I know exactly who he is. He and I have a mutual friend, my buddy Jack Randall, who's a jazz booking agent at Ted Kurland Agency in Boston.
Oh, sure. Yes. I haven't talked to Kurland in a while, but I know the name, and I think Ken has mentioned him before. But I'll just say, it gives me a certain affinity for radio and what you guys do. I know it's a lot of work, and you're dealing with all the ups and downs of that business. But
totally
it's great, and he always tells me what's going on. So I'm a big fan of what you're doing. So keep it up. I'll say a hello, and I look forward to seeing you. I'll call you and give you an itinerary, and then we can figure it all out Saturday.
You're the man. Be safe, brother.
Okay, you too. All right, Dave. Take care.
Aloha.
Bye-bye.